Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to our Sunday show here. Yep, make sure we're all good. Live from Denver, it's Sunday afternoon. It's Critical Q&A number 448. Let's flip over to the chat so we can see that up on the screen. There we go. Yeah, sorry for being a few seconds late there. Just had a couple last minute things to take care of. So let's see if I can prove how out of touch and arrogant and conceited and horrible and awful I am today to all of my critics out there. And in the meantime, let's answer some questions. Excellent. Glad that we're looking and sounding good. Glad to be here. We have had some insane wind in Denver here in the last 24 hours. We have had 100-mile-hour wind torrents blowing between Boulder and Denver and up in the out in the plains and on the Front Range, and there have been power outages and fires. It's been a bit nuts. It's been pretty calm where we are. We haven't lost power. There were even controlled power outages where they shut areas down for, in case things went bad, I guess. Anyway, it's been pretty interesting. So hopefully and we're just on, from what I was seeing on the weather last night, we're on the outskirts of some, or somehow being affected distantly by a very large storm that's over in the east. Yeah, and then there was the earthquake in New York. Yeah, pretty wild weather we're having these days, Weather happened everywhere today. Yeah, and some of it wasn't so great. All right, so let me get my question box set up here for you all, so that we are doing the usual drill here of taking advantage of the YouTube Q&A feature here. So please put your questions in this area under this comments. I think that's how it works. Start Q&A. All right, so I have posted a Q&A comment there, and if you please put your questions in the area under this comment, and if you will please do so, then I will be more than happy to answer them as we get going. And yeah, let's go ahead and announce that I did reopen, or not reopen, actually I had to create a new one, but I did get back onto Reddit. The social media cesspool from hell. That is maybe anyway, it's a wild place, and there's a Scientology subreddit there where I have spent some time and let folks know I was back, and I might try to use that platform for future promotion of somehow, or sharing of my work, but also just getting out, getting about, getting my myself back out there again. I figured. Well, I'll just be straight. I mean, it was, I felt, in November, December last year, I was, and during the summer of that, things were a little raw for me. And so I was not reacting well on social media to some things, right? I could get into it with people pretty easily. And I don't like being provoked. I really don't. I hate that. And I don't like the way I respond to that sometimes, right? And so I was like, okay, this is just not at all forwarding who or what I want to be or how I want to interact with people. So I need to put the brakes on myself, step back from that, and figure out how to do that better. Right, because I can't just blame the rest of the world for their bad behavior, right? There's some degree of me, right? And so I decided, okay, let's just get out of Reddit for a while. Let's get off some of these other things for a little while, and then having gone through what we've been doing the last few months and learning and growing and feeling and trying to navigate again and make my best way through my best possible life. I thought, all right, well, there's, I sort of would check in every now and again on Reddit, see how things were going, and I just decided, somebody made a thread about me actually, and I was kind of like, okay, I think I need to make an account and at least say hi. If people want to have opinions about me or whatever, fine, they're going to anyway. There's nothing I can do about that. But at least this is a place where I can have a voice too. And so maybe I could contribute in some healthy way and not get into that sort of those entanglements and allow myself to get drawn into that stuff. Because I think if anything has happened in the last many months, it's been that my skin has grown a lot thicker. And I'm not perfect at all. Never claimed to be. But I'm not as bothered anymore by the name calling and the offense taking and the insults and the attempts to draw you into stuff and the trolling and all that kind of crap too, of course. But I'm kind of in a mood these days of not really, really being willing to sort of, I don't want to engage with it. I don't want to drive it into more. So I'm not going to, I don't want to engage with trolling or engage with hostilities or insults or anything. But at the same time, I want to have a voice and I want to be able to contribute where I want to and to constructive, positive learning moments and things like that. I want to be part of that. So, and you can't really do that if you're not there, right? So I thought, all right, let's get into this. And same on my, on my channel here. Okay, so great. We got questions coming in here, and I've also got a couple of questions preset for us, and we can have at it here. And I've I think that's all I want to say about all that. I think I've said everything else I need to. So let's get to it. Let's go ahead and start with the top here, and here's a first question. Oh, okay, Rhyme and Reason. Would a new Scientologist even know of Mary Sue's existence? Has she been wiped entirely from his hagiography along with the mentions of her in his lectures and credit on policies/issues she wrote? Okay, first off, plus 10 points to Gryffindor, Rhyme and Reason there for using the word hagiography in your question. Awesome. I hardly ever hear anybody use that word outside of religious studies circles. Yeah, so of course hagiography, is the biography of Hubbard as a religious figure. And no, I don't think that Mary Sue Hubbard has been wiped from the slates completely, but she is certainly not emphasized. Hubbard mentions her in so many lectures, so many times, and praises her, that it would be a bit of a challenge to actually remove her entirely from the library. And sometimes certain people were necessary for the anecdotes and stories Hubbard was telling in making the points he would make. So sure, they could go in and surgically remove every mention of her. They could do that. But they'd have to remove other stuff too that Hubbard was making points about, because he was using Mary Sue as an example of that. Often when he was talking, for example, about how Mary Sue could go to an org, a church, when he would go into town, she would come with him and she would whip all the auditors into shape and organize things up and get things rolling and going and productive. And he really seemed to rely on her for that. And he was quite a few times I remember him praising her or mentioning her in his lectures because of that. But would a new Scientologist even know of her existence? Probably not for a while, and probably not in any significant, important way. Mary Sue was never, she was an incredibly prominent part of Scientology. She was second in charge. She was the one who ran the Guardian's office. She very, very prominent through all the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. Before she went to jail and then got thrown under the bus by Hubbard and Miscavige. So she was an important figure. But other than the mentions in the lectures and some mentions in written works, she's not a prominent figure for Scientologists for quite some time. It takes a while to kind of get around to the... I think what I'm saying is you have to be in the culture of Scientology and be around it for a while. And maybe you'll probably hear about her maybe before you would even, see a reference to her or something. Maybe see some reference to her and then be like, oh, who was this? And people will be like, oh, yeah, that was Ron's, wife or whatever. And nobody ever talks in Scientology about Hubbard's first wife or second wife. Yeah, the second wife he never had, right, according to him in that interview. But he never does talk. People don't generally in that world talk much about Hubbard's wives and barely really talk about his family. It's mostly about Hubbard himself. That's what most of the conversation focuses around when it comes to the Hubbards. So, yeah, that's what I can say about that. This is a funny one. Rhyme and Reason. Is there any Hubbard reference to the IJC's superpower of being able to interact with declared SPs? Is he indefinitely PTS? Okay, so here we're talking about the International Justice Chief. All right, so in the entire world of Scientology and all the people who make up the hierarchy and organization of Scientology, from the Sea Org, staff, the public, all of it, there's one guy who is authorized to talk to or directly interact with declared suppressive people. And that person is the International Justice Chief. And what he does is he delegates that authority down to the Continental Justice Chiefs, which you might not know about. So where there is a single International Justice Chief, and he's located in that 12-story building on Hollywood Boulevard, by the way, the Hollywood Guarantee Building. So that's where he is. And last we knew, that was a guy named Mike Ellis. I'd be amazed if he was still on post. The guy's got to be pretty old at this point. But anyway, he was IJC forever. But there are Continental Justice Chiefs. So where you have this guy overall internationally responsible for Scientology justice and and carrying out the justice procedures properly according to Hubbard's policies, that's really the IJC's job. He has opposite numbers at each zone. So the Western United States has a Continental Justice Chief, and the Eastern United States, which is another Scientology geographical area, has their own Continental Justice Chief, and Canada has their own CJC, right? That's the abbreviation. And LATAM, Latin America, has its own CJC. So each of these different areas, and they are also delegated with dealing with the suppressive people in their region or area, right, in their zone. So when I was, for example, doing my A to E steps, trying to get through my step A, I was dealing with the Continental Justice Chief, not the International Justice Chief. And I was having emails back and forth with that individual. So that's kind of how they delegate it. And I've only met the IJC once, informally, like at an event or something. And I interacted with the Continental Justice Chief often. We were in the same building, worked in the same areas. And so personally, he was a bit of an odd character, but that was just him and his personality. I can't really say what it is that makes the CJCs impervious to the suppression, except for the fact that they are supposed to be super highly educated in all aspects of suppression, and therefore are capable of dealing with this person, and the fact that because the person, maybe this is a mitigating factor, is because we know that this guy that they're dealing with is a suppressive. They're declared suppressive. We're not wondering. We're not, it's kind of like criminals, right? Once they're convicted, that's it. The fact is they committed the crime as found by the jury or as declared by a judge. That's the fact. And once the fact is established, boom, they go to jail, or they get their punishment. I think in Scientology, it's the same kind of thinking where once a person is declared, that's it. We know they're a criminal. We deal with them as a criminal. We treat them like a criminal. We talk to them like a criminal. And we know exactly who it is we're dealing with. We're not in any sort of question about it. And the thing about undeclared suppressives is there's always doubt and reservation. And, well, we haven't declared the guy yet. Maybe he's still good. Maybe there's still good in him or something, right? And so you're dealing with somebody who you're uncertain about or you're unsure of. Are they suppressive? Are they not? Should we declare them? Shouldn't we? You know, because there's that uncertainty, maybe that is the chink in the armor. Whereas once they're declared, you know what you're dealing with. That's the closest thing I can come up with right now to a logical answer to why it is that these individuals would be the ones who don't go PTS when they are connected with suppressive people. Because clearly the IJC and the CJCs are connected with suppressive people. So it's a great question because it exposes that little bit there, but interesting. Okay, let's carry on. Okay. Red Pill 3000, have you ever watched the Scientology Network? If so, what do you think? Do you sing karaoke at bars? Okay, so I have watched bits and pieces of the Scientology Network over the years since it came out. I commented when it first appeared, when we were first hearing about it, when actually even before that, when they were doing the fundraising for it and before they announced it coming out. We talked about the Scientology TV and how ineffective it was going to be, what a bomb it was going to be, right? How it was just going to tank miserably and nobody was going to really pay any attention to it. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened. They now have even non-Scientology related content, documentaries and stuff that have nothing to do with Scientology produced by independent documentarians and filmmakers. And they feature that as one of the slots on their Scientology TV network. So I think that it's, it has about as much appeal as the Mormon channel has to me, right? Or, if the JW started a channel, maybe they have. It just has no appeal at all outside of the bubble world. Nobody's flocking to these things thinking, oh, what is this? Let me go watch these things and find out. That's not how people approach this material in the main. And I have never heard once of somebody, I've seen some Scientology success stories about people who watched something on the channel and bought a book or something. But I've never heard of even one person going to the channel, watching stuff there, like Scientology television produced content, right? Describing Scientology, talking about how great Scientology is, meet a Scientologist. Here's how Scientology is making a difference in the world. Here's our anti-psychiatry material. Here's our anti-drug material, all this kind of stuff. Never see anybody go to that and come back out. Certainly nobody's ever come to me, or I've never seen anybody post on social media. My God, did you see how incredible these Scientologists are? I need to join up with these guys right away. Right? That does not happen. And they were definitely thinking that was what was going to happen. Which really leads me to wonder when I think about the stuff Mitch Brisker talked about with us. And talks about on his channel, it really makes me wonder, how tuned in Miscavige really is to how Scientology is perceived in the world. I just don't know, he certainly doesn't act like somebody who understands that they should be doing full-time 24/7 crisis PR management to destigmatize their toxic public image. He just does not act like somebody who gets that at all. And you have to wonder, man. You really have to wonder. All right, thanks, Rhyme and Reason. All right, let's carry on here. What else we got? Oh, I have a couple pre-made questions, so let's jump over to one of those. I think I'm popping over to the right screen here. Yeah, let's pop up question 1. Okay, this is an anonymous question. This is on the subject of what happens with all the confidential files, OSA, ethics, PC files, once someone has left. Has anyone successfully sued to have their own information released to them? When I left, they forced me to sign legal documents that were going to be kept in OSA files. I asked for a copy. No way. I'd love to get rid of that supposed leverage they have over me. Yeah, I get the question. The answer that I have that I know for sure is true is Laura DiCrescenzo, many years ago, successfully sued Scientology, settled out of court, but during the process of discovery and all the way up to the point of getting to the jury, and it was about to get there, and then they settled, if I remember right. During the process of all the pretrial stuff, her PC folders were released to her, and they had been vetted. They had been sliced and diced, so there was not everything in them that would normally be in them. I don't have specifics of exactly what was taken out, but they were vetted to remove names and stuff like that. But I believe she got all of her PC folders, or a good chunk of them. And from that, it was found that there had been well over 100 people who had had access to them, and that this was the very opposite of what you would call confidential files when you have that many people in across organizations, having access to those files, and people who should not even have had access to them, having access to them, having written notes in them and things like that. That's how we knew, right? Yeah. Anyway, that kind of came out in the course of that. That was all reported on Tony Ortega's blog, Underground Bunker, many years ago, and you can check that out. I've never heard, there may well be, but I have not heard of anybody else ever successfully suing to get their PC folders. I'm sort of a little bell is ringing in the back of my head right now that maybe I'm forgetting about one other case that somebody might have mentioned to me, but that could be a false memory too. I'm really not sure right now. But I can absolutely point to Laura. And she, of course, had to sign an NDA and had to, she's not speaking about this or speaking about Scientology. She's done. She's, that part of her life, I believe, is over, as I understand it, right? So I wouldn't want anybody like flooding Laura with communications right now about this. It's, she's moved on. But look up Tony Ortega's reporting on the matter, because that's where the actual data is anyway. Okay, so that's the answer to that. Let's go back here and see. Okay, here we are. Catching up with 2x speed. Cool. Let's go. And remember, folks, put your questions in the comment under the Q&A question about leave your questions here, because if you put them in the regular chat, I may not see them. I'm mainly looking at the question box here, the Q&A. All right, Beyond Jehovah's Witnesses. I love the way your name changes from week to week on the JW Apostate stuff. Do Sea Org members swear on a daily basis? Do kids in Scientology grow up hearing swearing at orgs? Fuck yes. Yeah, they do. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I remember 4th grade, I started swearing at school. And because, that's when you learn the words and start, using them at recess on the swings, in the playground, never in the classroom. You learn that very quickly by that one idiot who did try it, right? So you don't say it in front of the teacher and you keep away from the recess monitors and all that, right? But I got home and my mom caught me out swearing, like a little sailor. And my mom and dad laughed and laughed about it and basically said, look, we don't really care what you say here at home, but we would like you to keep your mouth clean if you can. It is the civilized way to talk. That was how they talked to me about it. So they said, look, you can talk that way, but people, eventually you keep doing that, people won't take you very seriously. It's very funny when you start doing it, right? They tried to make it into a learning moment, actually. It was kind of funny, a teaching moment. Because they said, look, you can talk this way. We don't really care, but other people will judge you, and they will look down on you for talking like that. So, you might want to keep that in mind as far as who you're saying those words in front of. And it's probably not a good idea to use them at school because, your teachers are going to get upset and it really doesn't present a very good image of you. So this was literally the talk that I got from my parents, but at the same time, these were the people I learned all the words from, right? I wasn't learning them at school. I was learning them from my parents because they would hang out with their friends and they were all Scientologists and it was just a swear-a-thon. You know, I could have put out a dime jar or something. I would have been rich. So, you know, for a swear jar, I could have made bank on that. So yeah, so yeah, kids in Scientology definitely hear an awful lot of swearing. Scientologists really don't hold back. And especially when you get to the level of the staff and the level of the Sea Org, man, it's just full on. Let's see here. Do Sea Org members swear? Yeah, and Sea Org members absolutely do swear on a daily basis. Yes, yeah, it's rampant. Okay, 1 second. All right. I heard some of the birthday event on Alex's YouTube channel. I'd be curious on your take on birthday game winners. Number 1, Class 5. Wonder what their reality of expansion. Oh, TC, number 1, Class 5. Yeah. I don't remember or know who. I didn't tune in this year to who the birthday game winners were. I think a year or two ago, I did a review of one of the international Scientology news magazines, and we went through all the birthday game winners, and I think Twin Cities was on there. Anyway, I believe. Let me say this. Let me just offer this as an answer to this question, and so there's something rather than nothing, because I can't comment on this year's winners if that's what you're asking about. But what I can comment on is the fact that the birthday game is a completely rigged activity. It probably has been for a while. There were a number of years. Back when the Ideal Org program started, there were it looked like there was a finger on the scale as far as who was getting chosen to win, because it was always, you know, one of these new Ideal Orgs, right? And even though we would see some of the old steady eddies grow or expand or deliver more than even one of these Ideal Orgs, it was always, oh, no, they're the ones who are always expanding the most, right? And you kind of went, And I remember Orange County losing one year, and it didn't really make a lot of sense, but they lost, I think, to another org that was just going Ideal or something. I remember, again, the specifics are eluding me. This was decades ago, but I just remember the first inklings. I guess that's why it's coming to mind. This was sort of the first inklings in my own mind of, wait a minute, this is suspicious. Something's wrong here. And I remember Ed Dearborn, who was the guy who was the ED of Orange County at that time. That name will ring some bells to some old timers. He was openly questioning it. Like, I think he got written up or something for having said, look, this looks rigged to me. This is bullshit, right? We should have won. And I think he ended up getting suck checked or something, or they ended up doing some correction and there was a tie. I wish I could remember this better, but there was some kerfuffle around that. I remember that. And I remember Ed being really upset. And I remember accusations of something's rotten in Denmark here. So I don't know. That's what I can offer up in answer to that one. Oh, sure. Yeah. Rhyme and Reason asks here, does Hubbard ever discuss what you're doing as a Thetan while the body is asleep? Excuse me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is when Hubbard, this is when Hubbard would run off to Venus or Mars, right? And do the grand tour, this kind of thing. The grand tour being literally a process in Scientology where you are sent off thetanically to Mars, to Jupiter, to the outer rings of Saturn, right? To the different places in the universe here or in the solar system. And you do this tour. And this is an actual Scientology procedure from the early 1950s. Hubbard developed a number of procedures and processes for people who had exteriorized. And then people like Hubbard in his lectures, or my dad once or twice, other people I heard in Scientology over the years would talk about when they were asleep, they would go flit off and go take a journey, right? And fly around the earth or fly around the universe or whatever. this is just something Thetans can do when the body is sleeping, because the Thetan doesn't need to sleep. He's not an energy consuming organism, right? The Thetan is an energy production unit, not an energy consumption unit. So the Thetan should just be able to just flit off and go do whatever, whenever, right? And leave the body behind. So that's kind of what's discussed in Scientology about what to do while you're sleeping. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everybody, that this is like that everybody talks about this over, coffee and community or something, right? This isn't openly discussed in too many places, but if it comes up, this is the kind of thing they talk about. All right, let's see what else we got here. Mark Bolobus. Hi, is the David Miscavige no-show in Paris significant at all in your opinion? Or was it just below him? I mean, I know he thinks everyone and everything is below him, but you know what I mean. Absolutely, Mark, I do. I do think it was significant. Miscavige not showing up at an ideal org is basically a little bit of a slap in the face to that field, to that area, because he's the one who is leading the religious movement, right? He's the leader of this crusade, and it's his program. Ideal Orgs was his brainchild. So I guess this is the second or third one he hasn't shown up to, as well as one over in Germany and another one I think Tony reported, and that's significant because what it basically indicates is he doesn't feel safe to be there. Now we can conjecture as to why that might be. And given the fact, not the sort of opinion or conjecture that France as a country is hostile to what they call sex, S-E-C-T-S, right? Not S-E-X. Cults, that's their term for cults, is sex. And the government, at a government level, they have taken actions even against Scientology, which was prosecuted and found guilty, and even on appeal found guilty of fraud. If I'm remembering all the details right, this is fairly recently, as well as going way back. France was the country Hubbard was found guilty in absentia because he wouldn't show up there, and they found his ass guilty of crimes back in the 70s. They eventually appealed and dismissed that, by the way. But this more recent spat of criminal activity that Scientology's been involved with over there that they got busted for, that happened. And I don't think Miscavige feels like I think he thinks that if he shows up there publicly, things could go very, very bad or wrong for him. Alex was talking about how there were indications of travel between the UK and Paris that looked like it was Tom Cruise and or David Miscavige. And it's entirely possible that Miscavige did physically show up to the building, but it would have been a little weird if he had done that and then not opened the building. So I have to wonder if he showed up at all. And if anybody knows, of course, let me know in the chat there. Huh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so all I guess I can say on that is that for whatever reason, and my best conjecture is because of France's history with Scientology of not being happy with them and being probably all too willing to cooperate officially in investigating David Miscavige or, serving David Miscavige or otherwise officially, getting in his way. That's my best conjecture as to why it is that he wouldn't show up and stand in front of a microphone there. And I don't know how he could go about explaining to Scientologists who were there why he wouldn't go on a mic if he was there. So it makes more sense to me he wouldn't even show up at all. And that blows me away. It really does. And I'm surprised that happened in those in one or two other places too. But I think it's a statement of Miscavige's state of mind, right? That he doesn't feel safe. It certainly is not the case that he was too busy somewhere else. That's for sure. There was nothing else occupying his time that was more important than opening an ideal org, right? He's not going to get away with that one, but I don't know. I'd be very, very curious to hear what the Parisian Scientologists think is the reason why he wasn't there. I'd really like to know that. Okay, let's carry on here. In fact, let's jump before I forget. I have one other prepared question, so let's go ahead and jump over to that. And it'll be this one. Jeff K asks, I saw the question about Scientology staff and Sea Org members drinking and getting drunk. My question is, since when can staff and or Sea Org afford alcohol? And cigarettes, for that matter. When I was a staff member, I could not afford to breathe on staff income. What little is paid out to Sea Org members, about all you could afford was laundry at laundromats, maybe occasionally. Yeah, I hear you, and especially back in the day. And the alcohol was provided to us for the bosun's party in December and for the beer and cheese party in December. As Sea Org members, we would be served alcohol. We would just get cases of it, right, and party down. So that's how we afforded it as far as that goes. In terms of otherwise going out and getting drunk on your Libs Day or time off or whatever, well, Sea Org members get, $45 a week when they're getting full pay, and that's enough to certainly go knock down a few. If you want to spend your weekly pay on your Libs Day getting drunk, you could very easily manage it. You can always go get, or you go down to the liquor store and pick up a few bottles and wander down to Venice Beach or something and have a good time. So it never really felt like we didn't have enough money to do it. If you really wanted to go drink, it wasn't that expensive. But on a regular basis, it certainly would be. And of course, nobody's supposed to be keeping alcohol in their dorm room or their couple's room. So you're not supposed to necessarily be doing that, having alcohol on the base. But and there were certainly lean times when there would be a month or two, of half pay, quarter pay, screwed up pay. I mean, there were definitely lean times where we couldn't afford, barely, my wife at the time could barely afford feminine hygiene products, and I certainly wasn't smoking or drinking because of the expense, right? So, I don't know, up or down. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Guess it depends on what kind of alcohol you want to buy and stuff too, as far as that goes. But I don't know. That's how I can. I don't know. That's what I got. All right, let's carry on here. Let's go back to the regular chat here. Henny asks, if you're born into a coercive control family and environment, how likely is someone to embrace that abhorrent behavior against others? Well, generational trauma is real, and it's a thing, right? People pass on the nonsense by carrying on, acting out the nonsense, the abusive behavior, in other words, from one family to the next to the next. The children's developmental years. Look, I'm not a child psychology expert, but I know enough to confidently say that the developmental years are the most important years for our development, for who we become and who we are and how we act. This is not controversial statement. How we deal with our children has everything to do with how those children are going to grow up and deal with their children. Everything to do with it. And you're an idiot if you think otherwise. Is it a doom and gloom? If you were abused as a child, you are absolutely going to abuse your kids? No, of course not. There's this wonderful thing called education and culture and learning and environment and all kinds of things that also contribute to who and what we are. So you are not necessarily just a product of your genes or a product of your upbringing. You can overcome these things if they were bad or abusive, but a lot of people don't. Just because you can doesn't mean a lot of people do. And it's, and that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind because we can get, too airy-fairy about it. No, we can overcome all this. Yeah, we can. That doesn't mean we do. And sometimes there are some genetic components. So I learned this from Robert Sapolsky's whole rundown on human behavioral biology, that there are certain genes, there are certain things that are resident within you that don't activate unless certain stressors or abuses happen to you as a child. So you can be born with certain genetic makeup to have proclivities or behaviors in a direction that we might label as antisocial or sociopathic or psychopathic. You might have that within you, but if you're not raised in an environment that stresses you, freaks you out, makes you fearful, puts you in fight or flight mode all the time, all synonymous, right? All the same thing, then those genes don't necessarily activate. They don't necessarily get like turned on, right? And it's not like they all have an on-off switch. It's not quite that simple, but I'm trying to use the language that was used in explaining this to me, right? This is how it works. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, which is why I've always remembered it. Because it seemed kind of important to what I do, right? I thought, like, that's something I want to remember. So that has everything to do with, beating your kid, for example. If children are abused growing up, and this is used as a teaching method, or as a disciplinary enforcement to reinforce teaching on a regular basis, right? You are asking for so much trouble. And that's just the physical abuse. Now let's talk about the psychological side, because you're not asking about just this physically abusive family. You're asking about coercive control in family members and in the environment there. And now we're talking about using covert and overt methods of deception, manipulation, and control, right? Gaslighting your own kids. Verbally abusing them, physically abusing them, spiritually abusing them. In other words, abusing them through religious beliefs or supernatural beliefs, which is slightly different from, gaslighting somebody, which is more of a purely psychological form of abuse. So you've got all these different avenues of control that you can exert over children or over people in a family environment that definitely teaches them how to get along in life. Oh, this is how I need to act. This is what I need to do. I mean, does it really just kind of all go back to the cat in the cradle and the silver spoon, right? And the little boy and the man in the moon. I mean, the old Harry Chapin song really comes to the fore and stuff like this, right? How you act toward your kids is how your kids are going to learn to act towards other people. And if you are in a coercive environment where children are punished and trauma bonded with, and all these things we talk about, yeah, that's going to carry on and have a very, very lasting effect. Okay. Carry on here. All right. Rhyme and Reason asks another good question here. Let's see. If an elderly Sea Org member is fitness boarded out of the Sea Org, are they relieved from their duty to return in their next life since they're no longer in the Sea Org? Wow. That is an interesting question. I don't know that anybody has ever thought about that. I mean, if you're fitness boarded out of the Sea Org, you're not on an LOA. You're out. You're gone. You've been kicked to the curb. You are no longer a Sea Org member. So I think the common sense answer here is no. You are relieved from your duty to return next lifetime. Certainly back into the Sea Org. You're not coming back. Right? Motto of the Sea Org is we come back. But yeah, not you. You got fitness boarded out, so you got kicked out. It's basically the equivalent of being court-martialed, right? Is sort of the thing. Not exactly the same, but pretty much the same if we're being honest. Okay. All right. Let's carry on here. Beyond Jehovah's Witnesses, is there any real defense for a former Scientologist to use fair game in the real world? I'm gonna understand your question to be asking me, is there any real justification for a former Scientologist to use fair game in the real world. I guess defense meaning like how would they justify it, right? If I'm understanding it that way, then I would say no, there isn't. And I fall back here to you don't use cult tactics to free people from a cult. Right? This falls under the old 2 wrongs don't make a right rule. The way you get people out of a destructive cult is compassion, tolerance, understanding, support, communication, openness, honesty, right? As much as you possibly can, be honest with them, but certainly never lie to them, ever. That will always backfire on you, always. If the lie is found out, trust is lost, and it's all over. So fair gaming, of course, is not just being mean or calling people names. Fair gaming is like coercive control. Fair game is a repeated pattern of harassment and stalking and going after people in a negative way to paint them out to be the worst possible version of themselves to everybody in the world, so as to, and the purpose is so as to end their criticism and their ability to fight back or come back or have a voice. That's the end goal of fair gaming, is to shut you down and make sure you don't ever come back. And that doesn't necessarily mean kill you, but it does mean take you out, remove you from the board. You are no longer a component in this game or this picture or this situation, right? That is the desired product of fair gaming. So, should we be doing that to each other? No. If you want to accomplish that, that's what you would do, and that's what it would be called, right? But that's not a good thing to do. And no, there's no justification for it, because it is an effort to destroy a person. It is literally an effort to, as L. Ron Hubbard said it, to ruin them utterly. And as I guess I should just, I don't know. I don't even know if I need to say this. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. It sucks to be targeted that way. It's the worst. To have it be done by people who you used to know and be friends with it's beyond. So no, there's no defense, there's no justification, there's no reason to do it, right? Any issue, any problem, any situation can be resolved with, well, almost any situation can either be, okay, let me put it this way. If there's a disagreement with somebody, if there's a problem with somebody, if there's some kind of like issue, right, that can be resolved with civil discourse and or ignoring it and moving on. Either one of those works. Viciously attacking and going after people with the intended target, the intended product being to take them out. Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? That's fair gaming, right? It has as part of its definition the implication that it is unwarranted, unjustified, and undeserved. Right? We didn't fair game Danny Masterson. Reporting on facts isn't fair gaming someone. So as to be super clear about trying these things, tearing these things apart, right? It is by definition unjustified, unwarranted, undeserved. So there is that part of it too, just to say that out loud. Don't know if I have much more to say about that right now, so carry on. Mark Turnard, does an e-meter have any useful purpose? Do you own one? No, the e-meter does not have any useful purpose that I've been able to figure out. And yes, I have 3 of them. Got a couple that people sent me for my use that I'll be sending back to them when I'm done, by the way. And I want to thank everybody who has extended the help to me to send me those things, because it's really been helpful, and you guys will see in a few weeks why. But yeah, I can't think of any real, I mean, other than, suppose you could play party games with it or something, but it's, it's not reading what people think it's reading. And the way they interpret it is so wildly stupid that you just, you can prove anything on anybody with, if you want to. Anyway, it's all rather silly. So, so there you go. Okay, what would... Jesus, this is an interesting question. What would happen if the justice system used fair game as part of its punishment for criminals? Wow. I think the world would kind of be a sucky place to live in. I mean, the whole point of criminality and imprisonment is sequestering criminals away from the rest of society so that society can get on with being a society without people tearing it apart or tearing it down. It doesn't fit in a just and fair society for criminals to be fair gamed. Criminals go to jail and they're supposed to be rehabilitated there. That's the theory. Or minimally punished there, right? But no matter what, removed, sequestered, put apart. That's the whole point. So fair gaming them is just kind of a form of torture, really. I mean, social torture, and I don't know why you would do that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I would not wish that on anybody. Okay, let me put it a different way. Fair gaming somebody is a terror campaign. It's a psychological operation designed to destroy them psychologically and hopefully physically. Ideally, the target removes themselves from the board, right? From the game board, from the situation. And however they do it is okay, right? You're haranguing them. You are invading their personal life and their personal space. You are invading their social networks. You are destroying their reputation. You are destroying their credibility. You are ruining their relationships. You are ruining their ability to get and hold down a job. You are putting so much stress on the person that they are literally freaked out 24/7. That's what it is to fair game somebody. I don't think anybody has the right to do that to anybody for any reason ever. If somebody is a criminal, indict them, prosecute them, and put them in jail. That's what we should do with criminals. Yeah, that's what I can say about that. I don't know. And the fact that, obviously everything I've said here, this is how I see it. So should people in X cult spaces, from your first question, is there some justification to do this to each other? No. Not unless you're a really bad person. And then you could justify it 20 different ways. But at the end of the day, it still is what it is, isn't it? It's just not right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you bet. Oh, okay, yeah, we got some good questions here. Ooh. Anthony Spurgeon asks an interesting one. What cult needs a movie about it that doesn't have one yet? Now, Anthony, my first thought on this one was a fiction movie, actually, right? As opposed to a documentary. I don't know if you're meaning a documentary versus like a movie. When you say movie, I think like, cinematic film. Maybe I have an answer to both. Let me think here. I would love to see a movie version of something, of a Scientology story, accurately told. It would horrify people. That would be interesting. But it doesn't have one yet. The only thing that I have not seen any exposure on yet, that I'm waiting to see exposure on, and it's probably going to be a little while, and I'm not aware of any efforts by anybody anywhere to try to do this exposure, especially in documentary or movie form. But I'd love to see radical honesty taken apart. That'd be good. I'd love to see something about that. Documentary wise, I don't know that we need a movie about that, but like a documentary, that would be enlightening for people, because it's subtle and it is, it's somewhat subtle. It depends on if you know what you're looking for, I guess. But boy, is it nasty stuff. Ooh, it's like a narcissist dream, that stuff. So that might be something that is waiting to be exposed out there. Yeah. Okay, Lutz Albrecht asks, your mention of Mary Sue's non-erasure brought up an interesting thought. Would Scientology give it another try to falsify history using this newfangled thing called AI? I think Scientology is absolutely going to try to take advantage of AI in some fashion, but probably not for another 10 years. I'm just laughing at my own joke here, because that's about how long they take to catch up to stuff, right? It took them about 10 years to catch up to cassette tapes, and then about another 10 years to catch up to CDs, and then about another 10 years to catch up to DVDs. And, they are very slow on the technological uptake. And I don't even know exactly what they would do with AI. It could be very useful to them in terms of categorizing, cataloging, indexing. It would be amazing for them, because Hubbard's body of work is quite large, as we've talked about. So AI could be a real tool for them in that way. In terms of rewriting history, sure. I mean, they could use AI to, if you told ChatGPT, if you gave it an input, and then said, okay, I want you to reformat this and remove, excise any mentions of Mary Sue, or remove any problematic elements as defined by, mentions of X, Y, and Z or something. It would do it. You could rewrite Hubbard pretty quick, pretty fast, pretty easily doing that. It's very powerful stuff. And yeah, I'll just say that. Yeah, absolutely. They could do that. But I wouldn't look for it for another 10 years. Because they're just so technologically inhibited in that group, man. It's really something how slow it takes for the technology to creep into the Scientology world. OBG Foster, Christianity, Islam, and the Mormons experienced schism soon after the deaths of their founder. Could there be a similar splintering of the Church of Scientology? Absolutely, there could. There kind of was back around the time that Hubbard was dying or died. Before Hubbard's did, right before it, there was the split with the Advanced Ability Center in Santa Barbara, in Montecito, California, with David Mayo running that operation. He was the senior technical person in Scientology, and he and a whole bunch of people split off from Scientology when they started really getting heavy-handed in the early 80s. And that was a big split in Scientology. It almost ripped the whole thing apart, almost destroyed it. But Miscavige rallied the troops, and they, figured some things out and overcame the IRS. And basically, with a lot of song and dance, they sort of survived that schism by putting out a lot of revised materials and becoming very official, and then creating RTC to go after these offshoot groups. right? That they would label that way. And because they had Hubbard on their side with the trademarks and copyrights. And so they legally took those schism groups out. They just took them out, through legal means and otherwise. And an awful lot of fair gaming, an awful lot, like the hardest core fair gaming that's probably ever happened. Paulette Cooper, David Mayo, right? Man, really went after those guys. Okay, so now if Miscavige doesn't keep holding this together, by the way, it will keep splintering. I mean, independent Scientologists are out there, and they pop up all the time. And it's not like there's lots of them, but they're out there. And some of the groups have survived for quite many years. Some independent practitioners have been independents, but others have kind of organized into little groups and kept themselves going. So in a way, the schisming and the denominations, you could say, of Scientology has already started. It's already well on its way. All right, we're an hour along, and we're just going to keep going here because I'm actually really enjoying myself. Yeah, let's carry on here. Daniel Sander, has Scientology ever made a statement or taken a position on the Israel-Gaza conflict or that region in general? All right, let me think about this one for a second. Because my first answer is no, but let me think. No, I've never heard one. I can't recall one statement ever. Certainly not by the Church of Scientology officially. Other than to comment about world events at events. World issues, right? World goings-ons, right? You might hear Miscavige drop reference to a conflict or reference to an event and talk about planetary bull bait, and that kind of thing. But an official position statement or an official, statement on the matter at all, no, not really. No, I could not tell you which side the Church of Scientology would officially fall on. They've been playing at being peacemakers in the Middle East region for decades now, with way to happiness distributions and opening up ideal orgs in Israel, in Jaffa, I think I'm saying that right, and missions in various areas and trying to get field groups or Scientology disseminated or talked about out there. But quite honestly, I think that when it comes to the Middle East, Scientology is in way over its head and knows it. And I don't think that they are really in any kind of power position or position to do much of anything with the Middle East except use it to get some photo shoots or get some PR statements for the internal Scientology public, more so than the world at large. Scientology is no mover and shaker when it comes to the Middle East. So, yeah, the way to happiness could end the Palestinian conflict overnight. Oh my God. Rhyme and Reason, I own a Mark Super 7 quantum e-meter and would like to use it as a rudimentary lie detector as a party trick. How should I set the sensitivity for best results? You dork. Get a copy of the Book of E-meter Drills and look up E-meter Drill 5RB can squeeze. That's how you set the sensitivity for it. Basically, you get a third of a dial drop on a light gradual increase of pressure on the cans until a light squeeze is achieved, and then relax it. You tell the person to do that. You say, squeeze the cans. And they give a little light squeeze, not a heavy squeeze, not a sudden squeeze, a little gentle light squeeze. And you watch the needle fall on the dial, and you lower or raise the sensitivity until you get it to a third of a dial drop when he squeezes the cans. That's how you do it. Just to answer your question. I say I will answer people's questions. I'll answer your questions. All right, let's see what else we got here. I don't know. Rhyme and Reason asks, will you ever have the insider back on your channel? I don't know. He went radio silent. I don't know. I reached out long ago, I think well over a year ago. Never heard back. I'm not sure if that person got busted or what happened. Don't know. But I haven't heard a word from them. And if they are out there, if Insider, if you are out there, contact me. I'd love to chat. Okay. Rhyme and Reason asks, I know the WISE Hubbard management system includes statistics. Does it also include conditions, lower conditions? How do you secularly work through the conditions? I believe that the secular version of the WISE materials, the Hubbard administrative materials that have been translated into real world stuff for businesses, I believe that only contains the upper formulas. I don't think the lower conditions are part of the materials there. I think it's only non-existence and on up. I don't think you have the liability, doubt, enemy, treason, confusion formulas as part of the WISE materials. I think that comes when they recommend, when they get you into Scientology and show you the ethics book and stuff like that is when you learn about that. I believe that's the case. I could be wrong about that. So don't hold me 100%, but from my memory, that's how it is. And secularly, you work through the conditions as an administrative procedure. You're told, okay, well, look, these are the steps we've got to get done in order to deal with this statistical situation. So I want you to come up with a solution or a battle plan or a workout here of how you're going to get this production up. And here are some steps that I want you to follow to do it. Right? So align your actions to these steps is how they would be communicated to about it. I mean, you can explain it in pretty simple terms as far as that goes. It would be the lower conditions you'd have a real hard time explaining to somebody in a business environment. That I would not even want to go there. And I'd be really surprised if Scientology includes lower conditions in their WISE materials. So you guys will have to let me know. Oswald Spengler, can we agree to refer to Scientology xeno-feminists as xenu-feminists? I don't know what that means, actually, now that I think about it. Okay. Jew Martins asks a great question. Hey, Chris, what do you think about this deprogramming done in 1 day or 3 days? Doesn't that leave the person traumatized? Okay, good question. And the answer is it all depends on how you do it. I don't like the term deprogramming. It's not a good word, and it tends to connotate an action or a set of actions that people would take, cult deprogrammers. This was especially big in the late 70s, early 80s, throughout the 80s and early 90s when this was sort of the thing to do. And this is what I meant earlier, by the way, when I said you don't use cult tactics to fight cults. So it's funny you're asking about this because deprogramming is not a good thing to do. Success rates of that kind of activity were 50-50 at best. And by that, I mean the deprogramming where they were kidnapping people or throwing them in the back of a van or tricking them into a hotel room and not letting them out and basically acting like a cult to get them out of a cult, right? You don't know yourself. You don't know what is going on here. We're going to force feed you all this bad information about this group and you don't have any desire to be here at all, but we don't care. We're going to even tie you down, tape you down into a chair, hold you down, assault you, do all these horrible things to you. Everything I'm saying here, that did happen to some people back in that time period, and it was not good. Nobody who's kind of in this space now looks back at that time and thinks about the good old days, at least nobody that I know. And I've talked with quite a few people off camera, people you've never met or heard of, who were part of that or knew about that or were adjacent to that or, right? I've talked to lots of people about this over the years and it's just not a good thing to do. You absolutely are doing nothing but traumatizing the person, trying to wake them up. And that's not how you go about doing a mentally, like a competent intervention, right? A good intervention looks like a conversation. You know, it doesn't look like the Hunger Games or something, right? That's not how you do it. So it should not be a traumatizing experience with lasting effects that you're going to have to deal with. The whole point of an intervention is that's the point where you're trying to stop traumatizing the person and get them away from the traumatizing environment. You're trying to do the person a service and an aid. You're trying to help them and give them a helping hand, not a slap across the face or a punch in the gut. That's the best way I can describe it, right? Is that's what you do. So yeah. And it can take, it doesn't have to take a long time to do what I'm talking about. You know, an intervention is a little bit different from the kind of advice that I give people who are doing, like friends or family, right? You can stage an intervention. And I've been part of a couple of them. And they were very interesting. But that's a little, and that's kind of your short, quick, like, okay, we're gonna figure things out. We're gonna get this person into a conversation. We're gonna make this happen. We're gonna let this person know we care about them, and this is an act of love, not hate. This is not about trying to force them to do something. This is about trying to get them to simply listen and understand that there are people who care about them, and that there is more to be known about this group that they are part of or this individual they are connected with. And could we please give this information to you, right? It's that kind of a thing. That can all happen in a day. And a person can wake up. They can, oh my God, right? I had no idea. I didn't know, bop, 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 right? And sometimes just finding out, holy cow, that alone can do it. You don't have to forcefully, get that across to somebody. You can sit them down and just talk to them about it. You just have to have their willingness. That's the biggest part, is you can't do this with somebody who's not willing to hear you. Because when somebody's not willing to hear you, y'all know how it goes. It goes for shit. The conversation goes nowhere, right? So there's no time frame necessarily in this, right? Now, what I was going to earlier is when I'm talking with people one-on-one, friends, family members of cult members, we talk about strategies that you can take that are longer term, that are more about seed planting and maintaining communication with the person over time, because that family member or that friend isn't going to stage a full-blown intervention. They're just having their own individual relationship with the cult member or with the victim, right? And so they can only do what they can do. And doing a full-blown, let's sit down and talk you out of this thing isn't in their wheelhouse. So instead, what I have helped people with is, well, how do you talk to this person so that you don't blow it up? How do you make sure you don't, set off the landmines that the cult is installing in the person, right? How do you tiptoe around those things without blowing them up? Because that's the mistake most people make. They go too far, too fast. They're too hostile. They're too upset, and they create all the wrong effects in the cult member. Right? They make them more defensive, more on edge, more ready for a fight. And that's the exact opposite mindset of where you want the person to be able to talk to them rationally about the group or person that they're involved with. Okay. So, yeah, I hope that helps clarify some things on that. But yeah, no deprogramming. I am not a supporter of anything that I would label deprogramming, and that's and I'm glad you used that word so we could differentiate that. This looks like bait. Do you remember any inappropriate rhymes as a kid that would be canceled today? Are you trying to get me canceled? Yes, I do, and I'm not going to recite them here. Oh, boy. All right, K-Dog-DK. Question. Hello from Denmark. Here we have at least 4 private Scientology schools. What kind of teachings about Scientology and LRH are they getting? Good question. Probably a bit different from one school to the next. Private Scientology schools tend to mix it up as far as how they put their curricula together. The Portland, Oregon, Delphi standard tends to be something that a lot of them aspire to because it's the most successful private Scientology school in the world. It is now, by the way, at least from what I'm hearing, is sort of edging slowly but surely away from its only Scientology clientele and is now accepting other students from other places and is concentrating more on expanding its curriculum beyond the Scientology stuff by necessity because there's not enough students and money coming into the Delphi school. Now, that's all just what I'm hearing. So anybody else who might know more about that or know anything about that can certainly chime in. But as far as private Scientology schools go, there is no unified curriculum that they all get. They roll it their own, right? They have certain materials they can get from the Church of Scientology officially that are study guides and study materials for kids. There's a grammar for kids. There's a study skills for life for kids course. There's a basic study manual that has how the misunderstood word and the lack of mass and the skipped gradient study rules. If you're familiar with Scientology study technology, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's these 3 barriers to study. All the kids in any Scientology school are very certainly going to hear all about that and become well indoctrinated in Scientology study tech as a primary thing. Any school that acts like a school is, of course, going to have all kinds of secular material of reading, writing, arithmetic, all that kind of stuff, getting the maths, getting the sciences, getting all that stuff in there, and that doesn't really have much to do with Scientology. They mainly use the study stuff. Some private Scientology schools will enact a Scientology ethics and justice system where they will use knowledge reports and have kids writing reports on each other and reporting bad behavior and this kind of thing. Everybody's kind of snitching on each other, and they will encourage that and use that report system that Scientology sets up. So, so that could be part of the system there that they're educated in. Let's see. You're probably going to have in some of these schools, maybe not all of them, you're going to have indoctrination about the reactive mind to one degree or another in terms of if there's an accident or injury on the playground or something like that, everybody will be told to be quiet. Don't say anything, right? When somebody's injured or has an accident or a problem, you don't talk, right? It's supposed to be absolute silence so that nothing goes into their reactive mind to later inhibit their abilities. So, so you might see some of that bleed in. You might see certain things like assists, the touch assist and the nerve assist, stuff like that. You might see things like that bleed over into some of these Scientology schools. The schools tend to run on Scientology policy. They tend to be organized around Scientology policy. So they'll have an organizing board and they'll have the green volumes or the Hubbard policies available, and they'll usually have those around. Sometimes they'll just have certain Scientology books, like the Scientology ethics book. Depends on who's running the show and how many Scientologists are actually there and on board for that. How much of a show are they trying to put on to not have a Scientology basis versus are they, trying to promote that? So, varying degrees. But those are, I think the things I've gone over here are things you could pretty much count on seeing at almost any private Scientology school in one respect or another. Beyond that, it would be up to the individuals there as to how much more they bring in. They could bring in a lot more. But I think that might be a baseline for you. Hope that helps. All right. Yes, getting Danish representation today. Did you... What's this now? Did you saw the help sign inside the blue building? Hibernating chipmunk. You'll have to clarify what you were talking about there. I don't see the big blue buildings anymore because I'm in Denver. So no, I didn't see that. If they have a help wanted sign, it's hardly a surprise. They're definitely interested in hiring people, but not usually off the street, which is interesting. I wonder if it was a help wanted help. Anyway, you'll have to clarify that for me. Great question, Joe. How interesting. I'll speculate on this for a minute. I saw an interview with someone who had done a silent retreat in the mountains of Bhutan for several years. I wonder how the effects compare to those who have been in solitary confinement in prisons. It's a great question, and I think what you're going to find there, at least my first guess, and I am totally just guessing here, I'm going to guess that that the basis of difference is going to be the fact of the voluntariness of it, the fact that the person wanted to go commit themselves to a solitary isolation up in the mountains. I don't think it's healthy to be gone out of society or away from social networks for that long. Personally, that's my personal take. I'm just my own opinion, but I don't think it's a good idea. But if you are doing that voluntarily of your own accord, that's a very, very, very different thing from being forced into solitary confinement where you don't want to be there and every second of it can become pure torture. I'm not saying that the guy who's doing it on his own bat is going to have a great time the whole time either. Of course he's not. But at least he knows he's there on his own bat and he can turn around and walk back down the mountain anytime he wants. When you're in solitary, you have no power of choice at all over your circumstances. And I believe the way solitary works is you get 1 hour out in an open space and the rest of your time is spent in a very small cell. And this, to me, is the literal definition of human rights violations. I don't think anybody deserves this. Not the way it's enacted, not the way it's done. And I've seen it around the world. I've seen film and footage of prisons from the UK to the United States to the Philippines to Latin America to Russia. And I don't care how you do it, what country you do it in. Solitary confinement is absolutely torture. 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 There's no other word for it. And that's what I would say about that, right? Is maybe this guy in Bhutan wouldn't have quite the same degree of trauma from the experience because he was there voluntarily, knowingly, and willingly. But again, I think that sort of thing is only going to last so long before you could use the company of other human beings. I really, really believe biologically we are built to be part of social networks. I really think that's true. Okay, this is a great question. I will answer this one. Okay, good. We have some more questions here, so I'm gonna go for this one. Red Pill 3000. What do you think about the following 80s movies? Jim Cotta, Krull, Red Dawn, and Labyrinth. Okay, this is awesome. Jim Cotta has to be one of the most ridiculous movies I have ever seen. Kurt, what was his name? Kurt. There was an Olympic gymnast who agreed to do this action movie in the 80s. He was like a gold medal winning Olympic medalist. And here it is. Kurt Thomas. Yes, Kurt Thomas. Anyway, this movie was atrocious. And the idea was that he was specially trained using his gymnastic skills to go do some secret missions for the CIA or some nonsense. And it was just an excuse for this guy to kind of kick people's butts using a variant of a martial arts technique that took advantage of his skill set as a gymnast. And it looked ridiculous. It was ridiculous. You don't find a horse or, parallel bars out in the wild. And they had to keep setting up scenes, action sequences for him to do where he would go through these gymnastic routines, kicking people's asses while he was doing it. It was awesomely craptastic. It was the worst. So so 2 thumbs up for Jim Cotta, absolutely. Let's see here in terms of craptastic movies, you understand, right? Movies that are so bad they are good. Crawl was a movie that I was bored by. I actually fell asleep in the movie in the theater when when the movie first came out. Let me see, what year was that? Let's check this here, because Crawl was another one of those. I mean, it was trying. It was really trying. 1983. Yes, that's right. 1983. So I was like 13. Liam Neeson was in it. Man, that was a long ass time ago. Yeah, I fell asleep. I actually have never seen all of Crawl. It was that, and I was 13. This was when I was enmeshed in Dungeons and Dragons, like all the time. I was Mr. Fantasy reader. I'd read all the Conan books, the Gore books, the Tarzan books, the John. I think I started reading some John Carter of Mars. I mean, I was into like Heinlein. I was into fantasy. I was into sci-fi stuff. And all in the direction of like, yeah, give me all this like amazing adventure and excitement and swords and sorcery and in all of that. And Crawl was just, what? It was so bad. I just couldn't connect with it. Okay, let's see here. Then we have, what was the next one? Red Dawn. Okay, Red Dawn I actually liked. This was the 80s. The idea was a Russian invasion in the United States. I'm sure some of you guys have seen that remake with Hemsworth. I didn't even bother with the remake. But that the original Red Dawn, Patrick Swayze, C. Thomas Howell, so many people in it, actually, Jennifer Grey. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was kind of Brat Pack does the military, right? It was a little bit wild that way. But we thought it was, I remember thinking with my friends, when I say we, I mean me and my social circle at the time, right? We thought it was a bit far-fetched. I was in high school, I believe, when it came out at the time. And so it was about these high school students. And we, of course, were not well represented by these adults playing high school students. But it was, yeah, we just thought it was we thought it was an okay movie. That's what I thought at the time. I thought it was okay. I remember feeling like it kind of stretched the envelope a little bit of reality. That the Russians were actually going to ally with Mexico and invade America. Really? Okay. But it was kind of fun. And finally, Labyrinth. Okay, now Labyrinth, though, I'm glad you put that one last, because Labyrinth actually was a movie that I love. I loved and I love. I really dig Labyrinth. There's a line that I am enamored with personally, and I know a lot of other people aren't necessarily get the same thing out of it that I do, but I really, really, really love this this bit at the end where basically David Bowie is being this, this kind of rascally Goblin King guy through the whole movie and making Jennifer, God, I can't remember her name, have to try to find her little brother. And that's just this great adventure movie and her having to, kind of be responsible for her mistake. But when he comes at her at the end, there's this really wonderful scene at the end when he's like, look, if you just, be my slave, I'll give you everything you ever want. And I just thought, holy shit, have I ever seen anyone put in one sentence, everything that a cult leader is right there. It's just always done that for me. It's always hit that spot for me, and I've never forgotten it, ever. It's always stuck with me, that movie and that line. So, okay, so let's move on. Enough movie talk. Here's an interesting question, Joe. Joe DeCeppo, is there a possibility that DM didn't go to Paris or did go and then left because of health issues catching up to him with how much he smokes and how stressed he is. Entirely possible, but purely conjectural unless there's any evidence indicating that. But yes, that could be, and thank you for bringing that up, that very well could be on the list of possibilities. But we would need some kind of data or evidence indicating that before I could, really give that option super credibility today. Oh, my shirt. Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is exercise. I thought you said extra fries. That's what my shirt says. There you go. Okay. Okay, Joe DeCeppo. Could someone who grew up in an abusive environment be like cult hopping? Someone who grew up with that being normalized would be more likely to get into a cult and abusive relationship in adulthood. I get the point of your question. It's a good question. In other words, could you become so inured or used to or habituated to a traumatic environment as a child that you look for and seek out such an environment as an adult? Could that happen? Of course it could happen. Does it happen? Yeah, of course it happens. Statistically speaking, I have no idea how often it happens, but I have run across no shortage of people in my life who have had that exact situation. I wouldn't necessarily call it cult hopping so much as a proclivity towards, living in a coercive environment, because that's what one has become habituated to. And again, this has everything to do with those developmental years. They are more powerful years than a lot of people are willing to give credence to. So much of how we think about things and how we think about right and wrong and good and bad, and how we think about how to deal with other people, how we learn how other people handle us and how we handle other people. That's all figured out by about 5 or 6, and you really got to do a lot of work to unlearn some of that if it's coming out of a habitually traumatic or abusive environment, because you're learning really bad habits. Right? And these are being modeled to you by your authority figures, by your mom and dad, or other people around you if you're being abused outside the home. So, and then you add the religious context to it, and, or certain ideological contexts to it, and it just gets awful for some people and some of their upbringings, right? And I'm talking about across the spectrums here. Any of this can become, as you guys know, any belief system, any set of ideas can become abusive in their practice depending on how you go about enacting them. So, so there you go. I was laughing there because Love Food Kitchen's response in the comments there to my shirt. All right, I think we're about almost ready to wrap up here. We got a few more questions. Let's carry on for a bit more. I can't believe we've already done an hour and a half. You guys keep me here. I'm just having so much fun with this. All right, Rhyme and Reason asks, would Scientologists deny the existence of fair game? Wasn't this policy confidential and then canceled? Would public or staff even know about it outside of OSA? Did you know about fair game? Totally good question, because fair game is not used as a term in Scientology within the world of, within the Scientology, public Scientologists. They don't talk about fair gaming people. They don't know about this. This is kept siloed. When we and we've talked about how important it is in destructive cults to silo information. These people know about this. No one else does. These folks over here know about this. No one else does. And these guys here are the rest of everybody else, and they're just they know what they know. They know the events. They know their services. They know what the magazines say and what the TV shows say. The public Scientologists, the staff Scientologists, the Sea Org Scientologists. Most of them don't have a clue what OSA is doing all day. And they don't want to know. They don't want to get into it, right? It's kind of, don't tell me, right? They don't want to hear criticism. They don't want to hear how the critics are being dealt with. They just want to know that the psychs are being destroyed and that their eternity is secured and that their bridge is waiting for them, and all they got to do is pay for it and get on up that bridge. That's pretty much the importances for a public Scientologist, or even most staff or Sea Org members, is just get the mission done, get the targets done that are in my face, get moving forward, do what I need to do to get up the bridge. That's their number one focus. How OSA deals with critics like Leah or me or Tony or Mike Rinder or whoever, you know, all they want to know is that those guys are SPs and nobody has to listen to them, and who cares, right? And that's kind of their thought about it. So, and if they hear anything about legal suits or battles or anything, they think to themselves, well, OSA's taking care of that, and we're going to win, because Scientology is the only game where everybody wins, right? And the sun never sets on Scientology, and we always win because we're Theta, and Theta potatoes are the, you know, the cream of the crop, right? I mean, I'm just giving you all the thought-stopping cliches that occur to me as they come into my head here from when I was a Scientologist. This is what I used to tell myself. So yeah, it's pretty bad. So yes, so Scientologists, kind of like with Xenu. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is, because so many Scientologists have so little awareness of what OSA actually spends its time doing, they will deny that any of it is even happening. Oh, that's just you being an asshole, lying to me about my church, right? You're just trying to, you know, make me disaffected. You're just trying to, you know, natter to me about the church. They won't want to hear it. And then let's see here. Now, the fair game policy was canceled in name only in 1968 by L. Ron Hubbard. We see this come up from time to time. Over the years, I've seen this come up probably 10 or 11 times, right? Probably once a year this comes out, right? Oh, but they canceled it. No, they didn't. Hubbard wrote an issue saying the term fair game, not the practice of fair game. Big difference. So we call it fair game. I don't know what they call it anymore in the church. I don't know what they ever called it. We call it fair game outside based on that old policy letter. I don't care what you call it. It is what I described earlier. That's the point of it, right? And no public Scientologist is going to want to acknowledge that or get into that or talk about that. And so to your last question there, did I even know about it? Not when I was in. I was, again, I'm telling you things, I'm answering these questions from my experience of it. So no, I didn't really know and didn't want to know and wasn't aware, and it was none of my business. You know, I would see private investigators sometimes. I would see OSA working with Scientologists and non-Scientologists sometimes. And I mean, like, a couple times over the years, over all the years that I was in. They really work hard in OSA to hide everything they're doing from Scientologists until they get the victory, the headline, the photo op, that they can then present it to the Scientologists in a very controlled way. We have defeated Leah Remini at the courtroom, blah, right? She's attacking us because she's a religious bigot, blah, right? This is what they want you to know about it. So this is what most Scientologists will accept about it. And they don't ask any more questions or go much deeper than that. You know, it's kind of how I acted as a Scientologist, certainly, and how I saw most people acting around me. All right. Okay, WW, what's all the Mike Rinder piling on among the SPTV crowd? Is it related to the removing Aaron from the Aftermath thing, or did something else happen? I am not going to comment on the Mike Rinder situation here on my channel or in my Q&A show, and I know that that's going to be frustrating for some people, but it's part of keeping my channel as much a drama-free environment as I can. And as far as I am concerned, the entire situation with accusations against Mike Rinder and all of the efforts to take him out and take him down and all of that pretty much amounts to what I was describing earlier in this video. And I don't really want to get into all of that because it just, exacerbates and creates more noise and makes me more of a target for the people who are doing that crap. And it's just not my thing, and it's not important to fighting Scientology to get into why people are attacking Mike Rinder. I will simply say that I support Mike Rinder, and I always have in his efforts. And I am very much feeling for his situation right now in terms of his medical situation, and I want him to have nothing but the best possible life moving forward. That's what I want from Mike. I like him. He's a friend of mine, you know, and as far as people attacking him, I don't get it. You know, I mean, I get some of the reasons as to why they say they're doing it, but I think the whole thing is wholly ridiculous. And I don't really want to go into more details than that. I am certainly not ever going to debate or get into arguing who's right and who's wrong about all of that. I've said literally everything I want to say about it. And, you know, I don't know. I'm going to try to move on from that. All right. Hi, Alex. Hey, in the chat. Welcome. Heard you did something special yesterday. Saw a little bit of your video, by the way, Alex. It was intense. Good job over there. All right, we have just a couple more questions in this thing here. So, yes, Alex has been a bad boy. Hey, let me ask you, Alex, since you're here in the chat and since somebody asked me earlier, what is your thinking? And you probably already said this on video, but I'm just going to ask you again here in the comments. What's your thinking on why Miscavige wasn't there? Didn't show up. Do you think he was there behind the scenes, or was he not there at all? You tell me what you think there in there. And then I'm going to look at the next questions I'm going to be answering here. He definitely wasn't there at all. Okay, so not even in Paris at all to inspect the building. I have one more question for you. I don't usually want to do this too much in the chat here, but I'm going to ask you one more question, Alex, and then I'm going to get back to the questions here. What were the Parisian Scientologists told as to why he wasn't there? Do you know that? Possibly he was denied entry when he visited last weekend. I reported him for not having a work visa. Oh. Really? Wow. Well, okay. Okay. All right. Well, good. Thank you for that, Alex. Appreciate that. I don't know what they were told. They were all trying to pretend it's possible he'll come, but no reason why he wasn't there. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Got it. So we don't quite know yet what the shore story was, but we need to find out because just out of curiosity, it's not going to change anything, but it's just interesting to find out what was the shore story as to why he wasn't there. Because I'm curious what Scientologists will accept as a reasonable answer to that, given the fact that this is his baby. Yeah, okay, totally got it on the report, Alex. Totally got it on that. Yeah, let's see what we can find out over the next few days. Thanks you very much for responding to my questions here in my own Q&A. Now I'm going to Q&A you. All right, we will definitely talk more about that as more details emerge, for sure. All right, so Ron and Dave's. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, let me please pile on with Leslie there, by the way. Good job, Alex. Yeah. Excellent work. Okay. Love Foo Kitchen asks, it's 50 years ago yesterday that ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest just down the road from St. Hill in Brighton, UK with Waterloo. What is yours and what would be Ron and Dave's favorite ABBA songs? Okay. I love the silly ones. I was going to say one, but I don't think that's actually my favorite. Let me check. Let me check something here. I was going to say Take a Chance on Me. I'm looking over their song list right now to make sure I'm not forgetting something. SOS. I like SOS a lot too. I'm going to say that there is something, yeah, it's a hard choice for me between SOS and Take a Chance on Me. There is something creepy and weird about how snappy ABBA songs are, isn't there? It's like somehow the guys who write that music figured out the secret sauce for like how to get, how to create earworms, right? It's just perfect. They're just so good. Anyway, yeah, it's yeah. ABBA is something else. Because if you follow pop music or documentaries about pop music over the last many decades, you're going to find that those ABBA people have been behind an awful lot of music that was not just ABBA music. And these guys are sharp when it comes to music. If I understand it right, they're behind a lot of very popular music. Let's put it that way. Oh yeah. Okay. And speaking of movies, last question we'll do here. What do you think of Metropolis? I have not yet watched it. Now, I'm not sure if you're referring to the old original Metropolis or the one with Robert Pattinson. Yeah, there's the 1927 Metropolis, which was hard to watch, the old original black and white. I enjoyed it. I thought it was an amazing piece of cinematic work because of all the special effects and the camera stuff and all of the things they were doing back then. This is the 1927. What is this, Fritz Lang? Yeah. Yeah, German science fiction film, right? The old Metropolis. I was impressed. I did a little bit of study of that stuff back in the day, about years ago, and watched a bunch of old films and stuff. I couldn't watch Birth of a Nation. I wanted to, but I couldn't quite get through that one. But Metropolis was a little boring. I was frankly a little bored with it, but I think that. But at the same time, I was still impressed with the cinematography of it, with the camera work and the stuff they were doing. So, yeah, can I say that I was impressed? It was impressively. I don't want to say it was impressively boring, actually, because it wasn't. The movie as a whole, I wouldn't say was boring. That would be a wrong word for me to use. I'm sorry I'm using that word, but yeah, I don't know. I was impressed by it. I should prepare myself better for questions like that. Okay, we are done with questions for today, guys. I've talked myself out here. I think this is one of the longest Q&As I have ever done. It's coming up on 2 hours right now. I hope that these answers today were good. Yep, just checking through some of the comments here. Yes, okay. Let's wrap up. Thanks for coming around. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Thank you for your viewership. It is always appreciated here. And I'm just going to keep putting out the usual things. If you are interested in Scientology as a topic and what I've broken it down about and had to say about it, this book right here might be of interest to you, Scientology A to Xenu. The wealth of videos on my channel, most all of them are evergreen and waiting for you to watch them. Please check out the library of work that I've put here for you. It is all about breaking down destructive cults, coercive control, and Scientology specifically in a lot of cases. But there's other cult stuff here too. Lots of other cult stuff. So I hope you will take the time to check out my channel. And of course, if you want to talk to me one-on-one, I am always available for consultation. I am not a therapist. I do not do therapy, despite what other people on the internet might like to claim or make up about me. I have never once said that I am offering anybody therapy. I am here for you to help you, and I can do that within the realm of my experience and knowledge and education. And I'm just trying to make the best use of that I can to help people. So I don't know why some people consider that a really evil thing, but whatevs. I know that I help people and I want to help you. So you can reach out to me for that. And on that happy note, I'll see you guys next week. Or actually, I'll see you tomorrow because we're going to have the Tony and Chris show tomorrow. All right. Straight up and vertical. All right, guys. Thanks for coming around again. Bye-bye.